Hey everybody, it's Elliot. I am a trans man, and I wanted to specifically come on here to give love and understanding to my fellow transgender folk and to give perspective and some tips and tricks to cis allies or folks who would like to be allies to what we're having to struggle with right now. Trans folk already and have always had to deal with systemic discrimination, especially trans women of color. Um, we have the patriarchy that oppresses them. We have toxic masculinity that oppresses them. We have transphobia and racial bias all throwing, stuff at them at once. Now you're going to add a pandemic and an administration that just flat out hates them, doesn't want to help them out, and wants to actually cause violence and harm to them. So we had some good news recently. I'll start with good news, and that was a Supreme Court ruling in favor of Amy, who unfortunately passed before she got to hear the kind of good work that she did, that said that it is illegal for an employer to fire trans folk for being trans and LGBTQ plus folk at large, based on a civil rights ruling on the basis of sex, a prior ruling. So that's great news. Unfortunately, I think a lot of trans folk are viscerally aware that employers can find a myriad of reasons to fire us anyway. And claim that it wasn't discrimination. And our ability to fight it is often at odds because we don't have the financial privilege that cis folk often do. There's a number of reasons why trans folk don't have the same kind of financial privilege that cis folk usually do, some of which are when we apply for employment, our documents don't always match, which means that either we choose not to list all of the things that we've done or schools that we've gone to, or we do, and when our potential employers run background checks, it appears as though we lied because when they contact old employers, those old employers don't know our name. They know us under a different name. So it just red flags in their system. We never get a call back. There's also just hate and discrimination, especially for trans folk that don't pass. You go to an interview, you do a Zoom interview, and they just take one look at you, and you don't get the job. They say it's for another reason, then you just never hear back. Trans men are often short compared to a lot of folks' ideas of what cis guys' height should be. And trans women are often tall compared to a lot of folks' ideas of what cis women should be. So that's a thing that we run into. A lot of times it took us a long time to come to our identities. We've lost family support. We've lost friend support. If we're trans folk of color, there's systemic issues why we haven't been able to have the kind of work experience that some cis folk have. And so our resumes often land us in jobs as essential employees during this pandemic, or we have to look for, frankly, illegal work, because, there's just nothing out there for us, or it's not safe to work regular jobs. A lot of that work that trans folk are doing, sex work and other kinds of work, are extremely unsafe during a pandemic, and sometimes impossible, just logistically not possible. So that's some of the reason that trans folk struggle with financial security. DACA recipients are particularly terrified right now. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of upholding Obama's Dreamer regulation, allowing, I don't know if that's a word, but allowing folks on the DACA program to remain in the U.S. That was only passed on a logistical decision, and could change if Trump is reelected, or if Trump files his paperwork correctly. Frankly, he's kind of a loser, in my opinion. So, anyway, Trump just also sort of decimated trans work when he told transgender folks that they're not allowed in the military. For a lot of transgender folks, that was their ticket to a pension and to a financial future. Trump recently partnered with the Department of Health and Human Services to pass a regulation that says that doctors in a lot of states don't have to, well, federally, don't have to treat trans folk if they don't want to. And that's all the reason that they have to give, to not treat us. So if we get COVID-19, if we're a trans man who's pregnant and we want to have a baby, if we're a trans woman who's just been sexually assaulted, and we go to the doctor, in a lot of states, the doctor can just say, we're going to let you die. It shouldn't be. If I'm the victim of a hate crime, and I walk down the street, thank God I live in Massachusetts, because the doctor has to try to help me. So, anyway, so that's something we're having to deal with. As a trans man with asthma, I have to bind in order to pass. I have a chest. Because of COVID-19, I haven't been able to have my top surgery. So I have to bind. It's very hot. If I catch COVID-19, that will make it very difficult to breathe. I won't be able to bind, which means it'll be dangerous when I leave my house. Obviously, I won't go to work if I catch COVID-19 and I know about it. But you know, that definitely is something that's on my mind, and it's scary. Getting access to hormones right now. A lot of trans folk are unemployed and don't have insurance. I live in Massachusetts, where I am grateful for Mass Health. A lot of trans folk don't have access to health care, and they can't get their hormones, and that messes with their moods. It messes with their self-security. It can mess with a whole bunch of things. In my case, testosterone really helps me with my asthma, so the idea of not having testosterone or access to it right now would really be terrifying. We're dealing with a myriad of mental health struggles. You know, it's something else to grow up in a society that just doesn't acknowledge who we are, that bases every decision on a gender that isn't ours. And it can be quite a journey to come to that. A lot of us have anxiety. A lot of us have separation concerns because our families have sort of walked away from us, or we've had to walk away from people just because they don't seem to think we should be allowed to live. Anyway, those are some of the things we're having to contend with right now. Trans folk of color are, especially trans women of color, they are exhausted, absolutely exhausted. This administration has fired up a racial bias in this country that has existed since the beginning of when America, started, the United States started. They're so tired, and they're beaten down, and we can all thank them, trans women of color especially, for giving us pride for giving us the right to marry whoever we want. Trans women of color are responsible for a lot of the privileges that we have now. That I don't even mean privilege. I mean basic human rights that we have now in this country today. So they are owed our respect and our care. I got so much love for the kids, the trans kids right now. They are home stuck with their abusive families sometimes. I cannot imagine how afraid they are in this pandemic. Trans folk, we are courageous. We have defied every odd. We are self-aware. We are constantly growing ourselves. We are very in tune with the ways that privilege manifest in our society. We are very aware of what we can do to break down some of the oppression that is built into our society. And I really hope that cis folk will lean on some of our experiences. I recently had a run-in with a cop. I have cis white passing privilege. Cops, at first glance, think that I am a white man. I am a man, and I am a white man, but they don't think that I'm trans, is what I mean. So I got pulled over a few months ago for an expired inspection sticker. It was only like a month expired. Cop had a gun, his hand on the holster. As soon as he ran my license, he learned that my old license was written for female, and this license was written for male. Scary. I was scared. I didn't know if I was going to make it away. And I got to tell you that if I was a black man, I don't think I would have walked away. I don't think I would have. Anyway, cis folk, we're tired. Trans women of color are especially tired. We do not want to have any more conversations with your transphobic cousin. We will keep doing it because we are tough. But we might message you now and then and say, hey, can you take this emotional labor off of me? Can you have this conversation with this person who's just not getting it? And you don't have to get it right. You don't have to... Here, I'm going to turn the light on because it's getting like progressively darker in here. You don't have to get it all right. You don't have to say everything perfectly. That's okay. We know that you don't know what it's like to be trans. We get it. You're not trans. Just have the conversation. Open the door. Tell them that all trans folk need, not what we want, but what we need is basic respect. Okay? We want to be able to live essentially boring lives where if we work hard and we're kind to each other, that we have the potential for success. That's all. You know, and some trans folk can't work, and they are not less valuable than cis folk, right? Like, we just want to be able to live. If your name is Robert and you want to be called Bob, I will call you Bob. I don't need to understand why you like Bob. I think it's a weird name. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Your feelings about it don't matter. What matters is that we have basic respect. Okay? And it's just, I'm older. I'm 30. You know, I'm grown. So I have some of the, you know, emotional tools that I need to set appropriate boundaries and to walk away from people who don't get it. Like, I don't need them in my life. I can just walk away. Some people can't. It took 30 years for me to get to a place where I loved myself enough and saw the value of myself enough to be able to say, you know what, you know, John Smith, I don't need your approval to live in this body and to be Elliot and to be in my power. I don't need your approval. So cis folk, I encourage you to offer your emotional labor when you have some to give to trans folk in your life. Hey, you want me to talk to them? Or just jump on and say, you know, just like their comment when they respond, or you know, come on underneath, or in person when somebody says something transphobic, call it out. When somebody makes a joke about, you know, trying to demean someone for, you know, dressing as a gender that they don't appear in your mind, call it out. It's fucking hateful, it's gross, and it's losers do that. Call it out. The kids need your support. Kids that are stuck at home need your love and your care and your effort. Minimal effort. They need it. If you have some degree of financial privilege, give that money. Don't offer that money. Just give it to the trans women of color in your life. Just give it away. If they have a Patreon, if they have a book, buy their book. Buy their art. Right? You don't have to understand it. It doesn't have to be for you. Learn something. They have a lot to give. And frankly, the queer community and marginalized communities need trans folk. They need our perspectives. They need our understanding. And they need our ideas. We are a community of people who know what it's like to be treated as less. We don't have to take this anymore. Anyway, trans folk, give yourself some love. Give yourself some understanding. Trans kids, if you can get out of the house, do it. If it's bad for you. And I am a person who will step in. If you reach out to me, I will find a way to get you help. And I think that there are a lot of other people who are willing to do that too. So lean on each other. Don't isolate and think that you're alone. I love you. Keep taking care of yourselves. Bye.